Hi guys! Today we'll be recapping a story entitled, The Hero Went Crazy Even Though I'm the One Who Died. Please like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Enjoy! Arlene lies on the floor, drenched in blood, while the poison spreads rapidly through her body. Tears fell from everyone's eyes as they witnessed what's happening to her. Moments before that happened, they went on an expedition in order to defeat Kuntun, the evil dragon stirring in their world. Noble warriors gather from various worlds and dimensions. The center of their entire party, the hero who unfailingly emerges in times of turbulence, the strongest individual spanning all worlds and dimensions, and her sole childhood friend, Elkinas. Elkinas leads them all to reach the lowest level of the insane labyrinth. However, just as they are poised to deliver the final blow to the evil dragon, she pushes Elkinas away and embraces the full force of its breath. Kunturn's breath has the form of a small sphere before gasifying into a poisonous gas. Thus, it is possible to block it and minimize the damage when it's under that form. With that, everyone can survive for one sacrifice. Her sacrifice. Not a single thing crosses her mind at that moment since she has to save them all. Amidst the tears and inquiries questioning her actions, she remains resolute. She has no choice. She has to do it to save them. Slowly, her vision becomes blurry. She can't see anything anymore. Her senses must be paralyzed. She can't even feel any pain. Well, for her, that's nice though. She's dying without suffering any pain. It feels fantastic. She was always curious how it would feel. She never expected it to be so refreshing and delightful. It feels as if she's in cloud 9 with the happiness that she's experiencing at the moment. With her very last breath, she wishes everyone to live well. For her. Those were her last memories, and suddenly she wakes up in a very different place and feels a strong amount of spirit energy. Processing the whole situation, she quickly realizes that she is in the World Tree. Suddenly, a man with long white hair appears. It's Zephyr. Zephyr greets her and shares that she's been away for 80 years. Sitting comfortably inside a house while having coffee, Zephyr shares that as soon as she died, he took her soul away. A soul bead came out from her mouth. Zephyr literally saw how happy she was as she was dying, so he took it. Arlene is ready to say something, but Zephyr explains that he just wanted her to rest beneath the World Tree guarded by dragons. He thinks she deserves that. She's the one and only human that the spirits like after all. However, regardless of that, Arlene doesn't think she deserves it. This just means that Zephyr, the guardian of the World Tree, has broken numerous obligations to bring her there. Arlene inquired how he had brought her there. Reflecting on it, Zephyr recounted the strange experience he had endured. The World Tree had demanded his blood. He had believed it to be the necessary sacrifice. Suddenly, it shed leaves and branches in a tangled knot, creating a space within which he placed her spirit to incubate. As time passed, a body began to form, and thus, after 80 years, she was reborn. However, now she appeared entirely different. Curious about what happened after she died, Zephyr shared to her all the crazy things that happened, particularly with Elkinas. It turns out that Elkinas killed the evil dragon and took its heart, making him achieve his immortality and ascend as a demigod. He also took the dragon's egg and raised it as his. Numerous individuals attempted to halt his rampage, including Duke Poniak, the knights, and various others, all of whom were mercilessly slain by him. Arlene finds the idea utterly absurd, but according to Zephyr's hypothesis, his motivation stems from the dragon's ability to transcend time. He must have harbored a desire to rewind time and prevent Arlene's death. Arlene thinks it's all nonsense because if it's because of her, then what about Jamil, her close friend who is the proud queen of thieves? Zephyr explains that both of them had nothing for each other, but Arlene won't believe it since both of them disappear every night, and whenever Jamil has something to tell him, he blushes. Zephyr explains that Jamil and Elkinas go sparring every night, and the thing where Elkinas blushes by what Jamil tells him is not for him to share. When Arlene first saw Elkinas, he was the shortest boy in her village. One time she went shopping with her mom. She saw him getting beaten up, so she tricked them by calling the guards, in which they ran, leaving Elkinas. She hurriedly helps him and treats his wounds, and from that day onwards, they were inseparable. Until one day, Elkinas disappears, and from what she heard, he was a descendant of the Duke Poniak. He only came back 12 years later, a year after her mother passed away. Elkinas wanted to come back earlier, but he wanted to gain acknowledgement from his family, but was kept in check instead and can't come back because of that. Elkinas also revealed to her that he had to leave right away because he had to catch a dragon. He only came by to say hello and that someday he'll come back. However, Arlene was in huge shock and begged to come with him. She was an incredible sorcerer, so she'll be useful. Elkinas doesn't want her to come, but she begged, saying she can't just let him go by himself. He's the only friend she has. She can't just let them part ways once again. Suddenly, Elkinas has this soft look in his eyes as he kneels in front of her, asking her if she's willing to face life and death with him. No matter what, the two of them should make it together. It was as if he's asking you to marry him, pre-proposal. As soon as Arlene knows that all of their other friends led a nice life, she realizes that it's only Elkinas who didn't. She quickly knows that she has to do something. She has to meet him and ask him not to raise the Couturn's egg. She's positive that he'll listen to her since she's his only friend. Girl, he's an entirely different person now. However, Zephyr thinks that she clearly doesn't understand the situation. Well, it seems like she has to experience it herself. But he still has to follow her. She has the dragon blood within her. She can't just let Elkinas cut her carelessly. And for him, the game isn't over. All of a sudden, Zephyr asks what position she wants since they still have to fake their identities after all. Thinking about it, Arlene really wanted to be a noble even before. She wanted to drink tea in a pretty teacup and dance in the ballroom. Suddenly, Zephyr reveals that she's already a noble. Arlene looks confused, but he explains that by the moment she died, she was awarded the title of Imperial Mage, the highest title that will allow her to have full control over the Mage's tower. To continue their plan, Zephyr then informed her that they'll be faking as nobles. She'd be Count Interan's daughter as someone who's never been to the capital and has a private estate in the countryside, but somehow pays enough money to be included in the list of nobles. Suddenly, Zephyr changes his appearance as a good-looking old man. Arlene looks surprised. He literally looks like he cares for his ladies. She thinks he'll be likable. And for the goal of this game, Zephyr thinks that it is very important to gain the kindness and favor of the young ladies. To reach their goal, he should be a father who lets his daughter, who dreamt of aristocracy and banquets, make her first debut in the capital. As soon as they arrived in the second biggest city, Arlene noticed that it is far different from the past. Even its name is changed to Arlene. While looking everywhere, Zephyr points to the statue located at the center of the Arlene Square, as he asks her if it looks familiar. Looking at it, Arlene does really think that it looks familiar, from the cape and the dress, but she can't really pinpoint until she suddenly realizes that it's her. She became a figure that is missed and longed for in the Empire. Her adventures and those of the hero companions have been turned into plays and songs that are passed down from generations to generations. Even her stuff is being preserved in the Duke's residence. They all loved and missed her. All of those are so sweet. After that, they proceed to search for dresses that she could wear, which took them hours. In the last dress that she wore, the sales lady complimented her, saying that it suits her since the color and everything looks good on her, making her get it. Right before they go, a snippet suddenly arrives. A snippet is a letter between dragons. The letter came from the errand runner that he planted in the royal palace. It has two news stories. One saying that there's another crimson dragon playing his first game at the age of 1500, and he has to find it before it stirs up trouble. While the other, which bears bad news, reports that Elkinas appears to be in a foul mood upon his return to the palace. Before they go, Zephyr asks her to pick a leaf from the wreath and chew it. By the moment they arrive, Arlene seems to be surprised by the barrier that Elkinas set. They were just in the forest a while ago and they suddenly arrive at the estate. Before they step out of the carriage, Zephyr once again insists that she chew and eat some leaves since they never know what might happen. As soon as they step out, Arlene's face is full of amazement seeing how nice the palace is. As soon as they arrive, they are greeted by a man who is half-elf, who Zephyr calls an insidious snake. He then warns Arlene to be wary of him, but the man hears him and denies all of those things that Zephyr says. The man immediately knows who Zephyr is, and as soon as he faces Arlene, he immediately feels a powerful energy from her. He then introduces himself and informs him that Elkinas is still in a meeting and that he can guide him in the annex to wait for him. But Zephyr dismisses that idea, telling him that he should take them to Elkinas right away. On their way there, Zephyr tells her how the Imperial family tries to control Elkinas' order to eliminate threats, by offering to arrange marriage, which she rejects right away. On top of that, he also brought back the Couturn's egg and killed everyone who opposed him. As soon as they arrive, they are greeted by Elkinas talking with a woman who looks exactly like her past self. She talks to him, informing him the exact thing that happened on the day Elkinas came back to meet her. She can't believe it. How can she know all of that? Suddenly, Elkinas goes mad. He realizes he's being tricked once again. Over the years, the Imperial family has attempted to deceive him. Last year was Jamil, and now Arlene. He then points his sword to the woman who is begging him to spare her life. Furious, he glares at the girl and orders her to inform the Emperor of her failure, then commands her to leave. In Arlene's head, this is far from the Elkinas that she knew. As soon as he notices the both of them, he then asks Carlot who they are as he continues complaining how Jamil and Hania are both dead, while he just chased off his beloved friend, which just leaves Zephyr. Suddenly, his eyes went to Zephyr, who's pretending to be a nobleman. He dashes right onto him while his eyes are bloodshot red. He had gone mad, asking Zephyr where he has been all these years. He knew everything through Hania and furiously asks where he took Arlene's soul bead. Zephyr told him that he swiped her soul bead without anyone noticing it, but it seems like Hania did. Then again, there's no way the highest-ranking priestess wouldn't notice something like that. Elkinas is fuming with anger as he threatened to kill Zephyr, in which Zephyr provoked him even more. Even from a distance, Arlene can feel Elkinas' intent to kill. This is the side of him that she never knew existed. Elkinas explains how he attempted to purify Arlene's body but couldn't revive it since Zephyr had damaged it. Zephyr urges him to search more diligently. Elkinas scans the room and gazes at Arlene. Given his trust issues stemming from the numerous imposters claiming to be Arlene, he wouldn't believe her even if she spoke the truth. At that moment, his eyes look at her. He is firm with his decision that it's not Arlene saying that. Even the other families who sent him lookalikes of her had put so much effort than her. Seeing his cold eyes pierced to hers makes her heart ache. Tears drop from her eyes faster than she could even imagine. She finally decided that she won't be telling him that she's the real Arlene. The moment she comes back to her senses, she immediately denies being Arlene, saying that she's Zephyr's daughter and that her mother is in the woods and she's in a vegetative state. Of course, Zephyr is in shock by what she's saying, but these lies are enough for Elkinas to calm down, making him think that Zephyr has his share of problems. Elkinas then looks at her and asks why they are there in the first place. She wanted to say that she's there to protect him after hearing the state of life that he lives in, but instead, she says that they're there to watch the hatchling. Then, Elkinas' mood suddenly changes, saying that it had nothing to do with them. Zephyr explains that he's still the Kuturn's offspring, and they have to determine the potential for him to turn into another Kuturn. They assured him that they won't steal it, but instead, they tell him what the problem is. With that, Elkinas agreed to show them. As soon as they arrive in the room, all of them see that it's a quiet room and looks like a nicely furnished room, but even though it's well lit, it gives them a creepy, unwelcoming vibe. Did the presence of Kuturn's offspring cause the atmosphere to shift? Slowly, they walk towards the cradle, and as soon as they look at it, all they see is a baby. They are both in shock. Suddenly, the baby stands up, raising both his hands, clearly asking for them to carry him. Arlene carries him and is totally in awe of his cuteness. Suddenly, she asks herself if the baby is truly the source of the creepy feeling, and she tries to check it once again. No, she only senses innocence from him. Then where does it come from? Confirming that the baby truly hatched from the egg, Zephyr can guarantee that the baby isn't a dragon. Hatchlings aren't born in human form. Dragons look like tiny winged salamanders when born. 5 months later, they rapidly mature and leave home to strike on their town. Given that the baby isn't a dragon, he's probably a Yongin. Yongins are created when dragons fall in love with humans or when humans fall in love with dragons, and nest an egg carrying the energy of a human, or when a human infuses their energy into an unfertilized dragon egg themselves. Suddenly, Zephyr furiously asks Elkinas if he poured blood on the unfertilized egg of the Kuturn. And he did. He poured blood on the egg and infused his magic and energy into it. The incredible amount of magic he gained from eating the Kuturn's heart is the reason why the child was born. Hearing both of them arguing prompted Arlene to implore the elements to silence the sound. She didn't want the baby to hear their argument because of him. She looks at the baby, who's smiling at her, and realizes that he must be born with purpose. She puts the baby back in the cradle and stops the both of them from arguing. Saying that Yongin is still a baby, he can still sense the atmosphere in the room. Even if he is a Yongin, it still bothers her that he's been a newborn for 10 years. Since his growth is abnormal, it would be best if they could continue to examine him further. Arlene informs him that there should be at least someone who can look after the baby's growth, and that's neither Zephyr or Elkinas. There should be someone neutral to act as a guarantor. Suddenly, the baby raised his hands once again, asking for her to carry him. Seeing Arlene carrying the baby, Elkinas orders her to be the one who would look after the baby. Arlene is in shock. She looks at Zephyr, clearly asking for help. Suddenly, Zephyr tells Elkinas that he'll stay as well, but Elkinas won't allow that. As much as he's annoyed that she has Zephyr's blood, she's the best candidate and he'll allow it as a special exception. If she doesn't like it, that's it. Whatever happens to the baby, neither Arlene or her kind will ever see the baby again. That's the ultimatum. If she backs out, Elkinas truly won't share anything with them ever again. She wants to give Elkinas the freedom and happiness, and for some reason, even if the baby's birth wasn't a blessing, she still wants him to be happy and live life with a purpose. She looks at Elkinas in the eyes, saying that she agrees to stay behind and look after the baby. As soon as Erin sees the room where she'll be staying, she questions in disbelief whether it's real or not, since it's too big for her. Also, it is Pontiac's custom to treat esteemed guests to the best hospitality. For Duke Pontiac, he's simply grateful to have found a nanny. Consequently, he asks about how to address her. That reminds her of a name that she has always adored. Since she is not allowed to reveal her true identity for some reason, she introduces herself as Adele, her new name. Following that, the Duke formally introduces himself as well as his child, Lintium Erin Pontiac, whom she will be looking after. Once he leaves, she can also feel the tension leaving her. However, Carlotte is still in the room and asks her a question. He is doubtful about her relationship with Lord Zephyr. Adele instantly panics. It hasn't even been a day yet, and it seems like someone is already suspicious of her identity. She tries to calm down as she reminds herself to pretend to be clueless. However, her explanation seems not to be enough to make Carlotte believe her. Admittedly, he already knew from the time she arrived at the mansion up until she was introduced to his grace. Not once did they address each other as father or daughter. Lord Zephyr only addressed her as a sorcerer, and the person he addresses as one is Lady Erin. That observation is quite fascinating. Even though he already figured out her true identity, Adele is still persistent enough to have to throw him off the trail. She then explains that she can control elemental spirits like Lady Erin. That's why His Grace sometimes calls her a sorcerer as well. In addition, she and he have a complicated relationship, but they're basically father and daughter. Seeing Carlotte's reaction, he still doesn't believe her. However, if she keeps going, she'll only look more suspicious. To change the topic, she asks him for a request. Momentarily, he assures her that his questions earlier were plain curiosity of an old man and not as a chamberlain of House Pontiac. Moreover, he has no intention of blabbing, so she has nothing to worry about. Moments after Carlotte left, Lord Zephyr appears. It turns out that Elkinas kicked him out. They quarrel for a while and eventually get tired afterward. They are so chaotic. Admittedly, Adele thinks that Elkinas was going to kill Zephyr earlier. He's capable of that since he killed someone before without blinking an eye. Witnessing how he turned into a different person now, she starts thinking that her sacrifice broke him. She then starts blaming herself, so Zephyr consoles her. She quickly recovers, and now her enthusiasm is back. Shortly, she tells him her plans. Firstly, her goal is to make sure that Linte is raised properly. However, something is bothering her. There's an incredibly suspicious energy inside the baby room, and she is determined to figure out what it is. What could that be? At first, Adele was certain that the energy source was the room's occupant. Well, he's the demon dragon Kunturn's offspring after all. However, when she held the baby, she couldn't sense any darkness within him. She also thinks that Elkinas must have sensed something wrong with the room, but he's not doing anything about it. Her plan is to look after the child while investigating the suspicious energy at the same time. Ultimately, her goal is to completely put an end to it. Adele's death saved a lot of lives, but that doesn't change the fact that it drove Elkinas mad. She wants him to completely accept her death and live a fulfilling life. For all that to happen, Zephyr advises that she has to untangle his feelings towards her. All she knows is that he feels regret that she died. Adele finds it silly that he's implying that Elkinas likes her. For her, it seems impossible. She's truly oblivious to his affection for her, despite him giving her the room reserved for the lady of the house. Ugh, she's so clueless. Now, she starts overanalyzing everything, unaware of the things he does for her. Meanwhile, Zephyr tries to calm her down. It seems like Carlotte is trying to be a hindrance here. Later that night, Adele falls asleep without realizing it. It's already dawn when she wakes up. She tries to recall her conversation with Zephyr. Earlier, they were talking about Hania, who became the Pope, and Jamil, who became responsible for cleaning up Daevene's back alleys. Both of them kept detailed records of the Kunturn expedition. Hania's deathbed confession is actually a transcription of the records she left prior to her death, as well as Jamil's memoir. What stands out about them is that it was a single diary she separated into parts and sold on the black market for a hefty price. Basically, she secured an inheritance for her family large enough for them to spend the rest of their lives in luxury. Also, that is likely the diary that the fake Erins sent by the Emperor took note of. In the past, Hania seemed to be fond of the Lady Sorcerer. She even invited her for tea when she planned to buy a house. On the other hand, Elkinas and Jamil are seen together, which shows that they have gotten closer. After reminiscing, Adele feels weird about the past. In the middle of self-reflection, she notices something unusual flowing in the same direction. It turns out that it's going towards the baby's room. No freaking way! Luckily, Adele detects the odd energy's direction and swiftly determines that it is headed towards Linte's room. There's nothing more she can do because it would be too late to walk there. I hope she arrives on time. Shortly, she summons Aerie and her hand seals. However, she is greeted with a scolding. As a matter of fact, summoning them without contracts can take a negative toll on their bond. She then quickly apologizes and promises to forge a contract with Ventus before she summons her again. At the moment, there is something else more important. Adele orders Aerie to take her to the East Wing. When she arrives, she notices that the room is naturally dark, even though it's already daybreak. It must be shades, mere scraps yet to become demons. They are so weak that even ordinary humans can get rid of them. Adele continues looking for Linte. Thankfully, he's safe because she put one of the world's trees leaves in his crib and another in his clothes. But it seems like the leaves are already dried. It would take at least the energy of a higher-ranked noble demon to contaminate even the smallest fragment of the world's tree's leaves. With this in mind, she comes to the conclusion that a noble demon was purified by the world tree's energy. Although it's merely a hypothesis, she is sure that someone is targeting Linte. She has another world tree leaf, so she can forge a contract now. Thinking about the situation, Elemental Lord of Fire Ignis is the perfect one for this. After Adele summons Ignis, they catch up for a while. Moments later, she thanks him for coming and asks to have the honor of forging a new contract with him. By forging a contract, he permits her to use his powers as she wishes. Moreover, given that he's adventurous and competitive, he's already looking forward to witnessing the full extent to which she can wield them with her stronger body. Now that their contract is complete, he feels enthusiastic since he has never felt such pure energy for a long time. It's likely that Adele will go down in history as a great sorcerer who has achieved the accomplishment of contracting twice in a row with an elemental lord. Before Ignis gets rid of the shades inside the room, she notices a maid sleeping in the corner. She then orders Ignis to warm the maid up after purifying the room. Shortly, she sees one of the shades and tries to catch it. In the middle of doing it, she sees the hero's sacred blade, Gelfina. Just when Adele assumes Gelfina's presence, Elkinas shows up holding the blade. What in the world is happening? Elkinas consults Adele about the ongoing matter. She then tries to explain everything, saying that she is just doing her duty as a nanny. However, he doesn't believe that the bizarre energy he felt are merely nanny duties. He is trying to imply that she is being suspicious, but in her defense, the baby is completely fine and sleeping soundly. He also asks if she's fine. Now he seems worried. The other day, he was so ready to cut her down, so his behavior today is quite weird. Since it's already late, he will hear the rest of her story during breakfast. Later that morning, Carlotte notices that she doesn't look well. For her, she feels a little bit uncomfortable thinking about having breakfast alone with Elkinas. She thinks that his grace must enjoy chatting over meals, but Carlotte disagrees. In fact, he actually despises it. Once she proceeds to the dining room, he's already seated. She then follows, sitting 2 chairs away from him. However, he instructs her to sit next to him. The delicious food in front of Adele distracts her from her thoughts about Elkinas. Looking at the dishes bring back memories of them eating together on the expedition. Soon after she expresses how this stew is her favorite and adds trivia about it, she realizes that she's low-key exposing herself. Afterward, Elkinas asks her to explain what happened in full detail. After explaining it, he finds her story quite plausible. Admittedly, he didn't inform her or Zephyr, but there are actually many powers that are after the child. Poor child. Even though he never formally announced Linte's birth to the world, they all found out somehow and showed up. Also, the overflowing, murky energy around the baby is evident. Adele reminds him that the continuous exposure of the baby is dangerous. However, no matter how many times Elkinas purifies the room, the dark energy keeps coming back. At some point, the dark energy began to follow the baby wherever he went. Moreover, Elkinas is not in a position where he can request help from the Imperial family or any church. Basically, there are restrictions on the things he can do. With that being said, Adele kind of feels sorry for him. She tries to comfort him, but immediately stops herself and shifts her focus to the matter instead. Girlie knows her priorities. Love her for that. Well, it's all because Elkinas decided to raise Kunturn's egg and turn the entire world against himself. There's nothing to be done about it since he brought this on himself. Only if the dark energy showed up physically would he be able to cut them down. However, they are infiltrating the estate slowly with a strange energy that he can't see, so he doesn't have an advantage. But he's talking about the heretics, the people who worship the demon dragon Kunthurn. A group that worships the creature that almost destroyed the world makes no sense to Adele. Elkinas further explains that on 2 separate occasions before, a noble serving as a messenger from the Emperor and a woman under the guise of a maid were both discovered to be heretics. Moreover, they were targeting Linteum. It's probable that the heretics mean to use that child as a sacrifice for Kunthurn's revival. After knowing all this, there is no way that she can ignore them. Shortly, Adele offers to help Elkinas protect him and the baby. She swears to keep young Master Linteum safe. Also, she's a sorcerer, so she's confident in her purification abilities. For a moment, he remembers something from the past that he had forgotten. She expresses concern, but he assures her that it's nothing she should be worried about. Momentarily, he starts doubting whether he's not at all different from the heretics, especially since he hatched the child for his own purposes. In addition, Linteum was brought into this world as his son. Although he may have been born from Kunthurn's egg, his energy is very pure and clean. Despite speaking as if he had planned to abandon him after he served his purpose, he continued to look after him even though he remained a baby for 10 years. Elkinas then decides to follow Adele's advice. He knows the baby isn't wicked by nature, and he is now committed to taking responsibility for its welfare. Because of this, she feels quite relieved. It's like the real Elkinas, who is just and good-hearted, is back somehow. In the middle of their conversation, Carlotte arrives to report the location of the heretics, where they held their summoning ritual. OMG, it seems like Adele makes him soft. Later on, she asks Carlotte for more details about the summoning ritual. He then explains that the heretics occasionally perform all kinds of rituals near the duchy. Going so far as to take innocent lives to torment another being is truly terrible. Adele starts to worry about Elkinas going there on his own, knowing how dangerous they are. Carlotte then assures her that there is no need to worry, since no one can compare to the Master's strength. Moreover, in the case of an emergency, they have support from the Church of Altima and the Midland Magic Tower. That reminds her of their conversation earlier, wherein he said that he's struggling to defend the duchy all on his own. Huh? Was he lying all along? By the way, Adele plans to begin purifying the estate later. Given that she's not familiar with the layout of the estate yet, Carlotte will assign someone to escort her. Afterward, Oli, who is assigned to her chambers, formally introduced herself. Not long after, she immediately rants about the visitors from the Imperial Palace who are investigating the fake Aaron situation. For her, they are just making a show of apologizing for the sake of formality. After realizing that she might have crossed a line by expressing her frustrations about the Imperial Palace, Oli instantly apologizes. It's evident in her face that she's worried, but Adele promises not to share their conversation with anyone else. Since they are on a good subject, she asks for more information about what she knows, especially the no-good prophetess princess that she mentioned. Yuzurian du Denevene, who is famously known as a young and beautiful princess of the Empire, is known for her ability to deliver prophecies. About 8 years ago, a severe drought took place, and Her Highness delivered her first prophecy during this time. She claimed that nature spoke to her, saying that Aaron is alive and will soon return. However, it seems like a false prophecy, which led to the whole mess happening currently. Meanwhile, Adele, who is actually the real Aaron, came back to life. Her existence is proof that Yuzarian's prophecy is correct, but she's the only one who knows that. I wonder if she could be a sorcerer as well. For Oli, she thinks that the Imperial family is taking advantage of the prophecy by stating all this fake Lady Aaron nonsense. Moreover, Her Highness seems to be fond of Elkinas as well. Now that they arrive at the central hall, Oli takes her leave shortly. Afterward, Adele starts the purification. She also calls the elemental lord of the water Nebulariae to assist her. As soon as she appears, she immediately complains of being called the second, despite being the strongest of the 4 elements. Her strong jealousy got triggered when Ignis boasted about seeing the sorcerer. Since she is still sulking, Adele tries to console her by acting cute. Fortunately, her charm works, so they are okay now. After the purification, Adele feels drained. If it weren't for her strong body, she would have been bedridden for days. Shortly after resting, Elkinas arrives. She sees him walking and shortly notices Prophet Princess Yuzarian following him. He seems upset talking about the cowardice of the Imperial family for apologizing for the same situation they keep repeating every year. However, Princess Yuzurian's real intention is to tell him about her new prophecy in relation to Aaron's return. While listening to their conversation, Adele confirms it in her mind. After all, she just wants Elkinas to accept her death as soon as possible and live a new life. Now, it seems like he's about to burst into anger. Admittedly, because of the prophecy, he keeps looking for Erin in a woman who swears not to be her. Whenever he catches himself doing this, he feels like a crazy person. He tells Yuzarian that he certainly wouldn't find peace with someone new, especially with her. Without further delay, he orders the guards to get rid of her after threatening to cut her down. Whoa, chill dude, you're scaring us! Meanwhile, Adele looks terrified, hiding in the corner while waiting for Elkinas to leave first. However, she catches him staring at her. As soon as she catches Elkinas staring, she begins overthinking things. She thinks he's upset at her for eavesdropping. However, rather than looking displeased, he looks like he's checking her reaction. Since she doesn't know how to react, she decides to run away and get as far as possible. Now she regrets listening because it makes her look suspicious, especially after running away. At the East Wing later that night, Adele feels relieved that there is no sight of Elkinas. Facing him would be incredibly uncomfortable, but she needs to check on Linthe. The moment she gets inside the baby's room, Lena, the maid who was attacked by the shades before, greets her. She immediately expresses concern for her. Fortunately, she hasn't been feeling any unexplainable or negative emotions since the incident. Momentarily, Adele proceeds to give her a magical calling device in case of an emergency. In the middle of their conversation, Linthe wakes up in a good mood. She then picks him up, which surprises the maid. Even 5 adult men couldn't carry the young master, but she's able to do it effortlessly. Consequently, Lena admits that she's afraid of the baby. In her defense, he had been a baby for many years already. To be honest, that's really weird. For Adele, she thinks that she's incredible for pushing through her fear to look after the young master. However, she also reminds her that he's just an ordinary child who needs plenty of love and affection. Since children aren't able to defend themselves, the only extent of their self-defense is to cry. In Linte's case, he expresses that by inflating his weight, which means that he is just protecting himself the entire time. After some realizations, Lena starts to feel awful. With that, Adele suggests giving the baby a warm embrace. Surprisingly, she's able to carry the baby in her arms. He's even resting his cheek on her. No, he's starting to trust her. I really do hope that things will be better for them. The next morning, Adele and Elkinas get together for breakfast. She tries to ignore the fact that she's been ignoring him lately after deciding that it's time to talk to him. Well, she came to see him to talk about Linte. However, the desserts on the table are distracting her. As soon as she mentions that all nobles eat cucumber egg sandwiches, he is reminded of someone pertaining to Erin. He finds their similarities quite an interesting coincidence, given that it's not a common menu item. While trying to redeem herself, Elkinas suddenly feels down. Adele starts worrying, but he simply orders her to get straight to the point. Well, that leaves her no choice but to follow. Shortly, she requests to allow the young master to relocate from his lonely East Wing back to the main house along with everyone else. Elkinas asks Adele, curious as to why she wants to move Lintium's residence. She explains that Lintium is safer and protected, unlike the East Wing, which is separated from the palace. She worries about the young master's safety and if something were to happen at night like the last time. Another thing is that the East Wing servants have grown distant from him because they're being ostracized by other servants, rooting to a rumor about the young master. And what the reason really is that the pure innocent young master shouldn't be locked up in there in the first place. She feels this great sadness that such a baby is always stuck in that room, and that he should show that he's not dangerous at all, because if not, the rumors will only continue. And such an adorable baby at that. Indeed, she's got a point. Hearing this from someone who came to destroy the child, he tells her that the world outside is full of those that only sees him negatively. Lintium is a child that was hatched from Kunturn's egg and hasn't grown for 10 years. That in itself is the reason why he thinks no one would love him genuinely and wants to bury that truth for now. Adele is angered by his certainty and tells him that she'll love him and he should show his love to him. She has seen his affection for Lintium on various occasions, being the only one able to hold the baby despite Lintium's apprehension. Caught off guard, he tells her she has the uncanny ability to look into people's hearts uninvited. She is glad she saw right through him. She then enthusiastically asks him if he will love the baby and won't try to use the baby to achieve his goals, only to be stared at by him. For a second, she thinks she went too far by asking those things, and maybe he's thinking of killing her right now. I think that's not what the stare meant, Your Grace. You're just overthinking. But to their surprise, he tells her that her request will be fulfilled. Elkinas has been feeling guilty over creating the child to satisfy his own greed. Not to mention, it seems there may be another way without using the baby. After hearing him, she realizes that he may not give up on bringing her back from the dead. He cradles Lintium in his arms. Seeing him happy with his touch gives him a relief. Since the matter of Lithium's residence has been taken care of, Adele went out to purify the heretic's ritual site. Elkinas might have been saying he already purified it with the sacred blade, but she can still smell the stench, and a very potent one at that. Adele continues her pursuit of dealing with the curse of the heretics. She finds it strange that despite the level of toxic energy, purifying it should have been easy for Elkinas. However, traces of the curse remain, so she realizes it must be a lure. This black magic operates remotely, where the gear and receiver function as a pair. Any magic performed on the gear applies to the receiver within roughly 3,043 meters. This means that even if the two items are far apart, as long as they're in working order, the curse can be reapplied at any time. It's a simple enough curse to break by destroying either the gear or the receiver. However, the challenge lies in anything being a lure. A typical mage could never find it, but not for Adele. An old friend magically appears in the air. Terratonia, the elemental lord of earth and chief of the four elements. The most noble spirit born under the blessing of the world tree. Being around her is enough to put Adele at ease. Adele desires to contract with Terratonia to unravel the mysteries of the curse of the heretics. However, after Adele's tragic death in the past, she will only agree under the condition that Adele swears to take care of herself in this lifetime. Seeing Terratonia's grief, Adele swears that this time she won't let her down. With that, the spirit is once again in her care. Terratonia begins consulting all witnesses within her range to learn what they saw that day. The elements of the earth speak to her, revealing that early this month, around 3 in the morning of the 7th day, rocks fell in that spot. In a speed of light, Adele shatters a specific rock into pieces with her magic. Can totally feel the rage there, Aaron! Suddenly, Terratonia feels a very disgusting energy emanating from her direction. She brings it closer with her magical finger for a look, only to be surprised by a Voon's doll. Dolls are supposed to be cute. This one just gives me an eerie feeling. Voon's is a cursed doll created to control another living being. The one they're seeing is made of many corpses in the shape of a doll, and the use of such corpses makes this Voon's more powerful than a typical one. The makers have even gone so far as to cover the curse's Vellum seal with hiding spells to keep it hidden from the hero. Adele takes the seal and Vellum, thinking it can lead to the culprits. While walking back to the palace, Adele realizes that it's not only Lithium that the heretics want, but maybe it's also Elkinas' body, a body perfect to be used as a puppet to attack humanity. She then hears ladies' voices from afar. As she gets closer, she freezes at the sight of someone, Princess Yuzurian. Amazed by Princess Yuzurian, Adele wonders how Elkinas have been so rude to someone like her. The jet black hair, the sparkle, I think I'm having a seizure with her looks too. She wonders if these ladies can do anything in such uncomfortable dresses. She gets back to reality when she's told to greet the Imperial Highness. She tries to remember how to pay respect to a royalty, only to be criticized by the ladies. She pardons herself for not learning such things and tells them that she'll learn going forward. The ladies are scandalous by her cheerfulness of lacking knowledge. Princess Yuzurian tells them that it's too much to expect that an uneducated backwoods noble would display the same level of etiquette as them. Just by looking at her very pitiful struggle, it's rather cute. Looks like beauty doesn't come with goodness. On the other hand, Adele's eyes sparkle in joy instead. She was already grateful that she understands her situation, but to find her cute is just another level. Wait, didn't she hear the slight insult? I think she just heard the word cute. Suddenly, a signal from Lena appears. Worried that something might have happened to Lithium, she excuses herself and hurriedly leaves, taunting the ladies of her rude behavior. They ask a nearby maid who was that uncouth woman that just left, only to know that she was the rumored nanny. It only confirms that His Grace has a child hidden away. Everyone is even more shocked with the fact that a mere nanny is staying in the Duchess's quarters. They immediately conclude that the frivolous woman must be the child's birth mother. Meanwhile, Adele witnessed Lithium flailing to walk and calling her mommy for God's sake. Look at those tiny feet! I just want to put him in my pocket! Lithium's body obviously grows in such a small amount of time. Talking and coordination have matured as well. As Elkinas came, Lithium cutely showed his fondness to his daddy, telling him he wanted to say that he likes his daddy for a long time. Elkinas asks her if she has any suspicions as to why the baby suddenly grew. Adele then borrows the wind's power to cover Lithium's ears. She believes that Lithium must have grown up as soon as she purified the site and the wounds, thinking Lithium was cursed to stop growing. After learning that someone has been intentionally keeping Lithium from growing up and that his life could have been in great danger, Elkinas tells her that he owes her a great debt. which she refuses to call a debt since she was just doing what needs to be done. But Elkinas insists that everything is thanks to her. Adele recognizes the face as the one Elkinas used to show her, an incredibly gentle, warm smile. He was so unhappy, isolated, and lonely for a long time, but his smile hasn't changed. Wrapped in silence, Lintium is irritated and accidentally dispels the magic with a single move, shocking everyone in the room. Adele is curious how the magic, though weak, it's not so weak that a child could dispel. Worried that he must have done wrong, Lintium starts getting teary-eyed. Oh, he's even cuter when crying. Adele immediately consoles him, saying how incredible it is to be able to sense elementals at such a young age, a true genius like his daddy. Hearing this, Lintium's eyes sparkle in happiness. He starts to read to become a more fine sorcerer. Adele feels an urgent need to dispel rumors about Lintium, even with a lie. An idea suddenly comes to mind, so she tells Oli and Lena that Lintium's growth was stunted by a curse, dismissing gossip about his slow development due to Kunturn's egg. Oli recalls Adele entertaining similar rumors herself, witnessing grown men struggle to lift Lintium. She just thought that he must be different because he hatched out of an egg and left it at that. Lena tells her it was all believable because he's the son of the great and legendary hero, even telling incredible stories surrounding Elkinas, including gnawing through metal at birth and vanquishing a wild boar as an infant, making the previous Duke and Duchess abandon him in a distant village in fear. Adele is left speechless by the monstrous image painted by these stories. Even though the reason Elkinas arrived at their village was that his father threw out his wife to marry another woman. His mother died, and he grew up in the care of his nanny in a town that he had no connection to. He returned to the duchy because of the successor matter. She's frustrated with how she can fix the absurd stories about him. Oli and Lena completely believe the narrative and even conclude that Elkinas had a lover 10 years ago since having a child out of wedlock makes so much more sense than the young master hatching out of an egg. Rumors after rumors. How can you fix this, Aaron? Adele was able to cut the conversation because it's almost time for dinner, leaving things as they are for now. Adele cleans up well, though still not used to dressing up for every meal. But Oli insists since the princess will be joining them. At the table, Zephyr and Elkinas are seated. She finds her spot, recalling the etiquette she's learned. But what confounds her is whose hands she's supposed to take after being offered both hands by the gentleman. Adele eventually takes Zephyr's hand since, according to etiquette, unmarried women are to stick with their parents. Seeing Elkinas' grim face, Zephyr laughs at the entertainment. Yuzurian arrives in her not-so-humble dress. Adele wonders why Elkinas is not escorting her, staying boredly in his seat, so Zephyr steps up. Yuzurian pleasantly accepts the offer, telling him how concerned she was about the Inturun family's reputation upon meeting Adele. But seeing Zephyr, she supposes not every Inturun is terrible at proper greetings. Adele clenches her hands, confused as to why Yuzurian is trying to humiliate her. Elkinas immediately calls out how Yuzurian must have forgotten her place as a guest, saying it would be in her best interest not to insult anyone as she's accustomed to at the palace. Elkinas might be a man of few words, but his words are no joke. Meanwhile, Adele wonders if she might have seen it wrong after seeing Yuzurian's eyes change color. Dinner continues with a frigid atmosphere while Adele eats calmly. Suddenly, Yuzurian calls her out, asking how she can eat so calmly while touching her foot. Adele denies such an act, saying her legs aren't long enough to reach across the whole table. Chills go down Yuzurian's spine, trembling as to what exactly is touching her foot. Adele immediately checks under the table, surprised by the presence of Lintium. Everyone is in shock, but what shocks Yuzurian the most is why the child keeps calling Adele mommy, even calling Zephyr grandpapa. Adele excuses herself to drop Lintium off with his nanny, leaving Yuzurian speechless. While on their way, Lintium reasons that he missed his mommy, the reason he got in there. She observes how he keeps calling her mommy, maybe because he just started talking, but she worries that people will get the wrong idea at this rate. The princess already seems to have gotten the wrong idea. Adele tries to tell Lintium that she is not his mother, but Lintium tells her otherwise, saying he prayed for her and she came, making all the uncomfortable things go away. Even after hearing those words, Adele insists on making Lintium cry. While trying to make Lintium say her name, Elkinas appears, having left dinner to find them. As Adele is supposed to walk over to him, she steps on her dress and almost falls, but Elkinas swiftly grabs her waist and holds her still. Adele's heart throbs unexpectedly at his presence. Elkinas tightens his grip on her, making Adele conscious. she shyly slips out from his grip. He tells her that he was worried about her since she's someone who has no skill when it comes to taking care of herself. Adele is confused as to why he thinks that way, so he tells her that she rushed out without finishing her dinner, when in fact she acted the most out of everyone there. Elkinas carries Lintium and asks Adele to walk with them to Lintium's room, telling her to drop the formalities with Lintium since she's not an employee anymore. A few paces away, Yuzurian eavesdrops, anger evident on her face. Give them space, for the love of God! Meanwhile, Zephyr storms into the room, accusing Elkinas of being a thief for making his daughter his secret lover and having an illegitimate child. He's angered that Elkinas left him with the princess. Elkinas answers him grimly that his son is more important than the princess. Seeing that Zephyr's about to blow a fuse, Adele tells him they were discussing the incident a while ago, and more importantly, she asks Zephyr about the secret lover rumor. She realizes the gossip has spread all over the estate. The gossip she planted herself. The heat disperses as Adele confides to Zephyr the curse she discovered earlier. Zephyr thinks they planted the Velum once the previous wounds naturally disintegrated. Based on the text, the Velum intends to bring ruin to the family's financial state after the birth of the child, and also interferes with the child's natural growth, a very vicious curse. Adele then shows the seal that comes with it, and with one glance, Zephyr can tell it's Count Sephilo's house seal. Everyone thinks it's a trap, especially since there's been a slew of items from the Sephilo house on the black market. Anyone with the means could secure his seal. Zephyr plans to ask for Sephilo's house's support as a host for Adele's upcoming debutante ball, and use the opportunity to investigate them. But Elkinas refuses and tells him that the debutante ball will be held at his estate. Both are confused with Elkinas' thinking. Zephyr is worried it will fuel the gossip. He even wonders if he's doing this on purpose. Adele thinks that perhaps his power's weakened, but Zephyr doubts it when he's eaten Kunthurn's heart. She tries to defend him, saying he isn't in his right mental state, and that no matter how strong he is, anyone would grow exhausted being the target of such pointed attacks because he's a person too. Zephyr grows fond of Lintium, but as soon as he hears how Lintium dispelled Adele's airy spell with just a wave of his hand, he loses his composure. After a while, Zephyr leaves with a suspicion. The child's inexplicable affinity for the elements doesn't make sense unless Elkinas did something. Zephyr storms into Elkinas' office, confronting him if his suspicion is true, that he added something to Kunthurn's egg besides his blood. Unlike other dragons, Kunthurn has no elemental affinity, so Zephyr is confused as to how Lintium possesses greater power than Eren, unless Elkinas put Eren's corpse into the eggs. Elkinas realizes you can't really beat an ancient dragon's insight, but Elkinas denies such a thing, stating that Eren's body was already cremated 20 years ago. Zephyr is only right about one thing. Elkinas kept Eren's body for 60 years to find a way to bring her back to life, but he eventually accepted reality. Confused, Zephyr asks him why he beat him up, breaking his ribs looking for Eren's soul bead if Elkinas didn't have her body. Elkinas tells him that it was 80% venting his anger and 20% jealousy. Jealous of being the only one to truly see Eren off. Zephyr is relieved. At least it's not the worst-case scenario he envisioned. After settling the allegations, Elkinas, in turn, asks Zephyr why his child, born from his blood and Eren's ashes, calls his daughter Mommy. And most importantly, why does Adele have Eren's mannerisms, use the name Eren admired, and share Eren's taste in food? Sweating bullets, Zephyr answers him that perhaps people beloved by the elements are similar. Elkinas calls him out for running from the topic, which he proudly denies, especially to a noble white dragon like him, while his hand is already on the door handle. Don't speak. No, don't try, old man. Before leaving, Zephyr tells him Adele is his daughter, but the only thing he can help is that Adele is connected to him, and if he opens his heart to her, he might learn the answer to his questions on his own, leaving Elkinas curious. Meanwhile, Adele sneaks out to deal with something while Lintium is distracted with the picnic in the palace garden. Just like how she summoned Tertonia, she calls another old friend, the elemental lord of wind, Ventus, who seems to be disheartened by the fact that out of all the elemental lords, he was summoned last. After a lot of sucking up, they finally contracted. Ventus notices that Eren didn't come alone by hearing a child's voice. She tells him that the child is Elkinas', but Ventus tells her that he's not the hero's child alone. While Ventus can hear all the sounds of the world, it seems Eren hasn't heard anything, so he tells her to ask the white dragon herself. Lintium comes rushing, calling her Mama Adele. Ventus can't help but recognize the child of the hero because of his high elemental affinity. He calls Lintium over, wondering if he can see him, only to be stared at and called ugly. Though offended by the child, to see an elemental lord without forging a contract, he is what Ventus would expect to result from the combination of the world's 3 most powerful beings. Adele is confused as to why Ventus said 3, just confirming that there's someone else involved besides Elkinas in Lintium's creation. But before she can even hear an answer, Ventus vanishes, seemingly trying to run away. Occupied with the mystery, Adele just heard Lintium calling her for a while, so she asks him why. Lintium asks her why the ugly mister calls her Aaron. This is about to get real. And that's it for today, guys. What did you think? As always, don't forget to like the video and comment for the next part so we know you want more. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications for updates. See you in the next one!